What is going on YouTube? It's Brendan from Market Makers. I have a curveball video for you today. Guys, I'm always striving to bring you the best TA, the best macro market movements, and new and unique information for you to digest, and I have that for you today. Guys, those of you that know me know I read a lot. I love to study ancient civilizations. I read a lot about ancient texts. I read about, iconography, symbolism, gematria. These are things that interest me. Anybody that reads like Dan Brown, like Da Vinci Code, I love stuff like this. Guys, market patterns are all throughout the universe. We've talked about natural law trading, Fibonacci numbers. Law of three pattern happens to be biblically based. And there's a pattern we are in right now, many of you are not aware of, which is called the Shemitah. This is also a biblically based pattern based on a 7-year cycle. The 7th year is the Shemitah year. Let me give you some backdrop on this. Some simple, basic Christianity 101 for you, okay? The 7th day is the day of rest. It's the day you give to the Lord, called the Sabbath. This works for years as well. The 7th year is a year of rest. All economic activity ceases. This is when you reflect on the blessings the Lord has given you. Now, before some of you I know are rolling your eyes right now, I'm going to tie all this together for you because this is very amazing when you hear the rest of this, okay? So, Deuteronomy specifically states the Shemitah year, which begins in September in the Hebrew calendar and goes to September of the following year. It's not the same as the Western calendar, okay? So September to September. All debts are forgiven in that 7th year. Now, originally, this was supposed to be a blessing for the ancient people. However, the ancient people of Jerusalem had turned away from God. 586 BC, the Babylonians come in, they destroy the city, enslave the people. The prophet Jeremiah gets a revelation stating that they will be banished for 70 years. 10 7-year Shemitah cycles, okay? So this is part of when the Shemitah became judgment. Now, bring this to modern times for you. That's the backdrop. Modern times, what if I told you every single major financial collapse in our country's stock market happened during a Shemitah cycle? Remember, these are 7-year cycles. That final year is the Shemitah year. I'll give you the last few, just rattling them off the top of my head. 2007 to 2008, that year, September to September, is a Shemitah year. Great financial crisis. 2000 to 2001, 7-year cycle. That year is a Shemitah year. .com bubble burst, also 9/11. Go back to 1987, Black Monday, 7 years prior to that. This is all based on the Hebrew calendar. You can Google this information. 7 years prior to that, Paul Volcker crashes the market, raising interest rates to battle inflation. 7 years prior to that, 1973, 50% declination in the S&P. Guys, you can go all the way back to the Great Depression. Jonathan Cahn wrote a best-selling book on this about a decade ago. I'm going to show you an excerpt from his DVD. He's a religious person. He's a spiritual person. But what I want to focus on with you guys is the actual pattern. He ties this all the way back to the Great Depression. He also shows you, if you read his book or watch the full DVD, he also shows you the amazing events that have happened on Shemitah years. Just an example, World War II started in 1939. That is a Shemitah year. Ended in 1945, 7 years. A Shemitah year as well. The Twin Towers were originally conceived in 1945 on a Shemitah year. Construction began on a Shemitah year, and construction ended. It took 7 years. It ended on a Shemitah year. The Twin Towers were brought down in 2001 on a Shemitah year. There's a lot of stuff like this in the book. So if you're interested in stuff like that, check out Jonathan Cahn. Check out The Mystery of the Shemitah. That is one of his books. He's written several New York Times bestsellers. Really fascinating stuff, guys. But I want you guys to watch this clip. It focuses on .com, and it goes to the great financial crisis. And it's all being told to you right now because we are trading in a Shemitah year. And what has happened in our Shemitah year so far? September 2021 to September 2022 is the Shemitah year, followed by the Tishri. The Tishri ushers in the Shemitah year and it exits the Shemitah year. And this is when you have a pickup. You have a pickup in these financial markets over these market crashes is what's coming ahead of us, okay? This is why I want to share this with you. We're going to look at the Hebrew calendar. I'll show you the most important day, which is Elul 29. 29. That is the day debts are supposed to be wiped from the books. Elul 29, and I'll show you what day that falls on this year, and we'll come back and we'll talk about this video clip afterwards. All right, guys, take a watch, be patient, be open-minded. You will enjoy this information.
In its last two manifestations, the phenomenon of the Shemitah has appeared to have intensified and strengthened. Its intensification has been so great that it's involved nothing less than the greatest financial collapses in world history. The Shemitah began in September 2000. The following month, American production begins to fall. Within a few months more, the nation is in a recession. As the Shemitah approaches its peak, it's September 2001. A calamity strikes. September 11th. The calamity causes Wall Street to shut down for the rest of the week.
The following Monday, it reopens. That day is historic. It is the greatest point collapse in stock market and Wall Street history up to that day. Fortunes are wiped out. Accounts are wiped clean. On what day did this greatest collapse in stock market history take place? The date is September 17th, 2001. But on the Hebrew biblical calendar, that day carries a different name. The greatest stock market collapse takes place on the 29th day of Elul, the exact day appointed from ancient times for the nullifying of the financial realm, the wiping out of financial accounts. Elul 29, the day of the Shemitah, the sign of judgment against a nation that has driven God out of its life and pursued idols and material gain. The judgment that specifically strikes the nation's economic and financial realm. That greatest financial collapse in history, that record would hold for several years until a greater crash would come. The stock market had been rising for several years after the financial depths that followed 9/11. And then comes the next Shemitah. It is September 2007. Within 1 month of its beginning, the stock market's momentum begins to reverse. The ascent is over. It begins to fall. The fall continues until the Shemitah reaches its peak in September 2008, when the fall turns into an epic global financial collapse. The collapse reaches its peak at the end of September 2008, with what becomes the greatest single-day crash in Wall Street history.
That morning, in the New York Stock Exchange, the opening bell refuses to sound. Even Wall Street takes it as an omen. The stock market crashes over 700 points. On what date did the greatest crash in Wall Street history take place?
It is September 29th, 2008. But the ancient biblical calendar holds a different name. The greatest stock market collapse in world history takes place on the 29th day of Elul, the exact day appointed from ancient times for the nullifying of the financial realm, the wiping out of financial accounts. Elul 29, the day of the Shemitah, the sign of judgment against a nation that has driven God out of its life. The judgment that specifically strikes the nation's economic and financial realm. The two greatest collapses in stock market history up to those dates each took place on the same exact day on the ancient biblical calendar. And they just happened to each take place on the precise biblical day that specifically ordained to touch the nation's financial realm and to wipe clean its financial accounts from ancient times, the day of financial nullifying. And it's not only Elul 29, but it can only be one Elul 29 in 7 years that can constitute the day of the Shemitah, the day of nullification. So on which Elul 29 did the greatest stock market collapse take place in the year 2008? It happened on the once in 7 years Elul 29, the exact one that constitutes the day of the Shemitah, and the greatest crash of 2001. When did it take place? It happened on the once in 7 years Elul 29 that also constituted the Bible's day of the Shemitah. So when All across the world, observant Jews are symbolically canceling out their debts to each other. The greatest wiping out of financial accounts in history is taking place on Wall Street and sweeping across the globe. According to the ancient mystery, the financial nullification has to take place 7 years apart from the one before or after. So the two greatest financial nullifications in Wall Street history up to their dates take place 7 years apart. Not only on Elul 29, but 7 years apart. 7 exact biblical years apart, down to the exact season, the exact month, the exact date, the exact hour, the exact minute, the exact second, the exact closing bell. No human hand in the world could have orchestrated such a thing. It required the working together of every financial transaction and interaction in the world. It even required that 9/11 had to have happened exactly when it did, as it was 9/11 that caused Wall Street to collapse in 2001 on the exact ancient appointed day.
The Shemitah is a mystery based on the number 7. In the chapter entitled The Mystery of Sevens, Kahn points out the striking appearance of the number 7 in the two crashes. Each takes place on the day marking the climactic end of the 7th year and the 7-year cycle.
The mark of the Shemitah is the number 7. In the crash of 2001, the percentage of Wall Street that was wiped out was 7%. In the crash of 2008, the portion wiped out of Wall Street was 7%. In 2008, by the time the closing bell rings on the greatest point crash in history, and the biblical day of nullification, the peak of the 7th year, the number of points wiped out, nullified, comes out to 777.
So if you want to hear something even crazier, so he alluded to the biggest point drop was 777 points. That was the Dow. And it was 777 points, but the S&P, it made its market bottom March of 2009. Do you know what the March of 2009 bottom was? 666. So there's so much symbolism in the marketplace. And again, just natural all trading. You don't have to believe anything he said. I'm telling you, if you watch the DVD or read the book, it's a 7-year cycle. It's really fascinating. On that 7th year, the Shemitah year, again, tied to the Hebrew calendar, you can see major market collapses in the marketplace. It's quite fascinating, but it doesn't change anything that I'm doing. It's just something I think is fascinating, and it gives some confluence because, as you guys know watching this channel, I do believe we are trading in a massive market bubble, and this is where we're at right now. We have Dante's descent, and you can see I have a candlestick pattern showing that Bitcoin should make some type of local bottom on October 31st. But before we jump to that, let's look at the Hebrew calendar really quick. So the Hebrew calendar, Elul 29, remember this is the culmination date for the Shemitah. It happens on the 25th this year, which is a Sunday. So you have the 26th, which is a Monday, the 27th, and possibly the 23rd. If we're going to see a major point drop, it'd be interesting to see if it culminates here in one of these 3 days. And you can see the Tashiri comes in after that, going into October. You have the Tashiri. This is when most of the market crashes happen, is in September and October, regardless of whether or not you think the Shemitah cycle is a valid thing. So just be aware of this. And of course, it lines up with my pattern as well, showing this market descent going down to October 31st for some type of local bottom, guys. But the markets, they are all dropping. Dante's descent, candlestick pattern, 11 bar drop, 20 bar tops, 9 bar run-ups. We are completing this pattern, it looks to me. I think very high possibility. I never say anything's 100%. I use Pareto principle. I'm going to go with 80%. 80% chance we complete this pattern, and you guys saw it on this channel. But let's go ahead and go to Bitcoin. Bitcoin, what are we doing here on the daily time frame? And we're going to jump over as well to the NASDAQ and the equities. Bitcoin is falling as well, 19,902 at the time of this recording, fell below the 45. Bearish price action on Bitcoin. But why is Bitcoin dropping? We need to jump to the equities. We'll come back. Let's look at the equities. The NASDAQ on the weekly is now at its 150. Once it loses the 150, which it eventually will, we'll see the NASDAQ drop down and look at the 200, 233. I do think that's going to be the next area for a bounce. This is a 300 down here. If we look at the NASDAQ on the daily, this is a key turning point in the marketplace of robots, my friends. This is a 50-day moving average, and we fell below the 50-day. Hopefully we can get a retest on this because it could be another entry point for those of you that want to be in a trade on the NASDAQ, specifically a short. I posted shorts up here. I'm in a short myself. Looking at the Russell, we have the Dante's descent here as well. The Russell is also descending. Go to the daily time frame. Shorted the Russell up here, posted these trades as well, and talked about it on YouTube. The Russell still has its 50-day moving average just beneath it, trying to find support on it. Hopefully we can get some more shapes to be made and not just have a straight declination. The reason this is a key area, guys, is 43% of the indices are bought and sold by robots. They're bought and sold by algorithms. And the 50-day is a major algorithm, okay? If you lose the 50, you go into sell mode. You go into sell mode, I think you're sweeping these lows, and you'll be sweeping them by October 31st if these patterns hold true. Looking at the Russell here on the 8-hour, and you can see we're bouncing beautifully off 1843, which is the pattern of descent here for the Russell. Let's go ahead and jump over to the broader market, the S&P. The S&P is bouncing off of this Ganfan line here on the weekly. What does that tell us? Let's go to the daily. The daily, the S&P lost its 50-day moving average. Again, symbolic of the broader market. And of course, not a coincidence you're bouncing off the 618, roughly 39.87 at the moment. We'll see if the S&P can hold this 618. What I want to see for people that are not in trades is get some type of shape to be made, maybe a double top or something that you can possibly get in on so you can jump into the gravy train, because these markets will be descending. The Fed will continue to tighten, okay? Key concept to understand. I see some Bitcoin or crypto TA people are now trying to cover the marketplaces. Guys, I've been in these marketplaces for over 20 years, traded the last 2 bubble cycles. I've been talking about the bubble on this channel since November of last year. You guys are well aware of it. Most crypto people don't understand the market movements. We are going to have massive bear rallies during this descent, but ultimately we will be going down. Let's look at Bitcoin on the daily. We were trading beautifully in a parallel channel, and look what we're bouncing on. 19,554 here on the daily time frame, and you hit this almost to the dollar. 19,530 and 19,513. So you got within $30, $40 here using the 3D2 as support. You're trying to hold this. If you start descending, guys, your 0.5 fib here on a trend-based fib projection, law of 3 pattern, has you at 17,806, the 618 at 16,058, and then you're going down to that 10K at the 1 fib, okay? And again, October 31st is a date to watch for this, but just like everything else, I would love to see upward momentum to be able to get some type of short position in here to short Bitcoin. Looking at Bitcoin here on the 1 hour time frame, let's see, do I have a 4 hour time frame? No, I got a lot of daily charts. 1 hour time frame, we are below the 200, the 150, the 233. We're below everything. We need to get some upward momentum in Bitcoin, find some shapes to be made, make some type of double top or something, give an entry for us to get into Bitcoin's descent. We'll see if these markets hold up. You know, a lot of this is going to be based on the broader market, which is the S&P and everything. People are coming to the realization that the Fed is not going to pivot, guys. We have 40-year high inflation. A key concept I want you guys to understand is the majority of people in life, in any profession, are basically incompetent, okay? This is the Pareto principle. You're gonna have 20% of the people at your business do 80% of the work. Any of you that work for big companies, you know that. Any of you that members of broad teams, you know that. And it's the same thing with money managers, okay? It's the same thing with money managers. So many people, they get in this echo chamber of bullishness and they look at any narrative possible, Fed pivot narrative, peak inflation narrative. But again, guys, as you know, peak inflation does not matter. If inflation's at 8.5 and comes down to 8, It doesn't change the price of anything. People are hurting because of prices. Inflation causes the prices to rise. And I fear for my country, I fear for the world when the Fed itself doesn't seem to understand what causes inflation. Inflation is always and everywhere a monetary phenomenon. That was Milton Friedman, Nobel Prize winning economist. It's caused by money printing. We print it, depending on how you want to look at the math, between 25% and 41% of all money in circulation since the pandemic. This is why we have inflation. It's not supply chain. It's not because of the pandemic supply chain. It's because there's too much money. There's not enough scarcity of the money. We have massive inflation. Everything's inflated. Wage inflation. We had very hot unemployment numbers come in, meaning the JOLTS numbers were better than expected. So unemployment's still strong. That tells me you have a higher probability of the Fed jamming another 75 basis points in here. And a couple of market facts to keep in mind, which is why we're going to keep descending. Never in the history of our country have we had above 5% inflation and not had a recession. 9 times we've been above 5% going back to World War II. 9 times we've been above 5%. Every single time we had a recession. The average drop for the S&P on my screen in a recession is 35%. Add to the fact we are trading in a massive bubble, trading in a Shemitah year. I think you're looking at a minimum of 50%. 50% brings you back to your pandemic lows, the same exact number you've dropped the 2 previous bubble cycles, by the way. So this number has history, and I easily see us going lower than that at some point next year if we spiral into another financial crisis like we did in the last bubble in 2008. Keep all of that in mind, my friends. Another video coming for you tomorrow. Let me know if you find that Shemitah cycle interesting, because I found that fascinating. Again, his name is Jonathan Kahn. If you want to check his book out or find his DVD, you can do that on Amazon and other places as well. Take care, everybody. Good night and good luck.